Hello and welcome to the Voice of Liberty. I am happy to be here for yet another one of these little short episodes where I discuss some weird things going on, some things I found interesting, and really anything in between. And tonight I felt it no better than to discuss Trump's Twitter war and literal nuclear war. So first off, this week has been just a train wreck mess in the world of Trump, Twitter, and social media. Trump sparked a war with Twitter over Twitter fact-checking him. Twitter fact-checked him on something that he actually needed to be fact-checked on. Earlier this week, or this past week, Trump, he put out a tweet kind of saying how mail-in ballots were ripe for issues with our voting system, which it goes without saying that there are issues with our voting system as a whole, but mail-in ballots are not going to increase or the lack of security within our voting system. But Trump goes and puts out this tweet. Immediately, Twitter, doing what it does, fact checks the tweet. We see this across all social media. We see Facebook fact checking people. We see even down to Instagram and other platforms fact checking people. Well, Trump doesn't like to get fact checked because when he gets fact checked in front of his cult, he appears less smart. In front of his cult, he appears flawed. And in front of his cult, it becomes a potential liability for him and this persona that he puts on of being this big, all-knowing man. It's kind of funny. This persona is a persona that we see replicated across tyrants all over the world. In North Korea, they are led to believe that their supreme leader is all-knowing. He has the knowledge of a god. In Russia, even to this day, if you question the leadership or the idea and thought process of Vladimir Putin, well, you may not live to see tomorrow. Of course, Trump can't do that in America because we have this thing called the Constitution that severely limits what he can do. But Twitter being his ultimate platform for outreach, his ultimate way of reaching out to his fans, well, them fact-checking him could cause the cult to question him. So Trump immediately goes into this massive tirade, literally loses his shit, calls into question what Twitter's doing, says that Twitter is silencing conservatives. That's kind of funny because I've yet to see anything that Trump or Gates or any of these morons that have been elected into Washington, D.C. be silenced. We see hate from people like Ben Shapiro. We see hate from Milo Yiannopoulos. All of this stays up. To say that Twitter or social media is silencing conservatives is absolutely hilarious. If Twitter and social media are silencing anything or anyone, it's people like myself, it's people like us that question the system as a whole and don't believe the bullshit. But anyway, I digress. Trump goes on this massive tirade. Tweet after tweet in all capitals, declaring that war has been declared on conservatives by Twitter. They're trying to rig the election. They're working on interfering with the election by silencing him. And of course, his cult follows this. His cult literally eats this up, retweets it, creates memes, and spreads even more. Then you have the QAnon crowd who are, of course, spinning their wild conspiracy theories that, yes, Twitter's silencing us. Our great president is calling them out. Except, here's the thing that unfortunately his cult, his people, his followers cannot understand. He's not freaking out because Twitter is silencing conservatives. He's not freaking out because Twitter is violating some rule. He's not even freaking out that Twitter is interfering in the election or rigging the election. He's freaking out, as I said, because they fact-checked him. And by fact-checking him, he could lose the cult's attention. If they get misguided by the wrong fact-checked in his mind, suddenly he loses followers. So Trump retorts in the only way that Trump knows how to retort, by overreaching the powers of his office through executive order. So he puts out an executive order attacking Section 213 of a very comprehensive bill that limited liability of websites. This bill protects websites from people like Trump. This bill allows websites to not be responsible for the things posted to their forums. This, of course, applies to social media also. But Trump attacks it. And, of course, his followers eat this up. This is an illegal thing. This is horrible. This needs to go away. Section 230 needs to be dissipated. When Section 230 is the only thing keeping his Twitter account alive. So Trump signs this executive order weakening Section 230 and therefore putting liability on tech companies for hosting people like himself. Then he puts out a tweet earlier this morning regarding everything going on in Minneapolis. He puts out a tweet saying, when the looting starts, the shooting starts. I probably butchered that. It's late. And, well, Twitter doubled down on what's going on, and they hid his tweet behind a wall. Because obviously that incites violence. Obviously that fantasizes violence, and it violates Twitter's rules. Well, now that Trump has weakened this protection Twitter had, they have to actually physically step in and do something now. So they hide it behind a wall. Of course, because he is a prominent figure in America and will be a historical figure in America, they don't delete it because it's a part of the historical record of a disastrous presidency. But they hide it behind a wall. Obviously, this is going to ignite more fire in Trump and cause more hatred for tech companies in Trump. But now they have to do something to protect it. So after they limit this tweet and they limit what you can do with this tweet, Trump sends out another tweet, doubling down on the double down, saying that Section 230 needs to be eliminated. Now, most people think Trump is stupid. He's actually very good at manipulating his cult. And he's very good at setting up situations that make him look all-powerful yet again to his cult. He's also very good at setting up situations where he becomes the victim and where he can use that to gain prominence and gain power with his cult. So, of course, back to this, he says he wants to eliminate Section 230, which would then eliminate all protections from liability on social media platforms for things that anybody says, up to and including me. And why would he do this? Why would he eliminate something that allows his very own Twitter to pretty much exist? Without Section 230, in theory, Trump's Twitter would have to be hidden behind a wall. You wouldn't be able to like his tweets. You wouldn't be able to do much besides retweet them. It would block Twitter's algorithms from distributing his tweets further, and it would cause massive problems for the platform he uses to reach people. Well, we got to dissect this a couple things here. First off, what is Twitter for Trump? Twitter is a way for Trump to put his message out there without his followers having to go anywhere that he doesn't want them. Look at cult leaders. They want to be sure that they are the ones putting the message out there. They want to be sure that their followers do not find the message that that the cult leader wants outside of where the cult leader wants them to find it. Twitter happens to be the preferred space for Trump to have his cultists find their information. So, why would he be pushing to do something that would literally put his Twitter behind firewall? Well, it's pretty simple. When you look at what's going on right now in the world between COVID, the tanking economy, and everything else going on and everything that Trump touches going to hell, he needs something that is going to light the fire under his supporters and help get them pumped up for 2020 again. What better way to have the grand finale of Twitter eliminating and silencing conservatives? See, Trump's not stupid in this. He's actually got a plan here. Believe it or not, I'm pretty sure he's got a plan. His plan is to eliminate Section 230, putting Twitter in a corner where they have to decide whether they could be legally liable for the things that Trump says, or they hide and shadow ban, essentially, his Twitter, protecting them, taking the liability off of them for what he says, and also keeping him from posting any new content that could cause them to be put in the fire. Well, what's Trump going to do when that happens? Well, Trump's going to turn around and say, they silenced me, the greatest president the United States has ever had, the best president, I'm better than Lincoln, I'm better than this, I'm better than that, which, by the way, Lincoln's a piece of shit. Only good thing he did was free the slaves. But what's he going to do with that? He's going to reignite his base because, well, now suddenly they have a new enemy. And Trump's the one leading them into battle. Trump's leading them into the fight against tech companies silencing conservatives. This has been steadily built up since his campaign came out. When he walked down, well, let me rephrase that, rode his ass down those freaking stairs, he began the war against tech companies. He began the step-by-step process to which we get to the point we are at now, where he has finally put a tech company in a corner, which is what he wanted to accomplish. Again, I'm going to say that. He wanted to put them in a corner. And he wanted to ensure that it was under his terms. So, he's here now. He's about to start that war against social media. He's this close to getting his Twitter account completely shadow banned. It's what he wants. This has got nothing to do with ensuring that freedom of speech exists. This has nothing to do with ensuring that conservative voices are heard. This has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with the Republican Party. It has nothing to do with being the president of the United States. It has nothing to do with being in the White House. It has everything to do with his ego. It has everything to do with his cult, loving him and embracing him and following him, worshiping at the tip of his shoe. I say shoe because he's never worked a day in his life where he's had to wear a pair of boots. I'd love to say boots, worshiping at the tip of his boots, but that doesn't work here. But if he gets banned, suddenly that fight's invigorated. Suddenly every presidential debate is going to be Twitter is against conservatives, social media is against conservatives. He'll never have to touch a single topic of what Biden says. If Joe Jorgensen makes it on the stage, he'll never have to touch a single topic of what they say, because all he'll have to say on national news is that Twitter banned conservatives and that social media is silencing conservatives. And he can fly by all the things he has failed at as president. He can fly right past all the things he has done wrong, all the incompetence, all the signals and signs as why he should not be reelected. He can avoid all of them just by going, hey, I was banned. Look at this. They're silencing the greatest conservative ever. Let's ignore the fact that he's not even a conservative. This is a part of his end goal. And this is Trump's Twitter war. His Twitter war will turn into his cult's Twitter war. His cult's Twitter war will turn into a social media war. And soon, it'll be uncontrollable. But that's not enough for Donald Trump. Donald Trump has to go even further, where it came out that he's discussed doing underground tests of nuclear weapons yet again. Now, I have a couple things to say here. First off, why the fuck are we testing nuclear weapons? Why in the volatile and hostile environment we are in right now, which, again, caused mostly by us, why are we discussing testing nuclear weapons? Well, turns out it's because the Republicans and Trump are claiming that China and Russia have conducted on low-yield underground tests of nuclear weapons. Despite no evidence existing of this, despite there being nothing that proves that this actually has happened, he's claiming it. Of course, the moment you say China and Russia, man, his followers get amped up. They go crazy. They get pumped because they're the great enemy. You know, because that's what the GOP, that's what they've crafted. That's what Trump's crafted. All these countries are our enemy. All these countries we cannot have peace with. So, he talks about how they tested low-yield nuclear weapons. Again, despite the International Regulatory Committee saying there's no evidence of this at all. So, he talks with the Joint Chiefs of Staff about having our first nuclear test since 1992. We stopped doing this because it's unneeded. And what I'm about to say, it's going to sound weird as a libertarian saying it. I'll explain this in a minute. But we stopped doing it because we had perfected our weapon. We had perfected nuclear weaponry. We perfected it when we were the first country to ever drop a nuclear weapon on anybody. We perfected it when we doubled up on that. Of course, part of Trump's approach to this is he wants us to be in this. He wants his followers to be out there going, we can't have them having nuclear weapons. Russia shouldn't have them. China shouldn't have them. We should be the only nuclear power. No, we're the first ones that shouldn't have nuclear weapons. And to Trump's followers, this won't make any sense. We're the crazy nation. We're the ones that got this brand new device and said, screw it, we're dropping it on 2 civilian population centers. If there's anybody that shouldn't have a nuclear weapon, it's us. But again, that doesn't make sense to Trump's followers. To Trump's followers right now, the sound of a test of nuclear weapons sounds as good as having a military parade through Washington, D.C., sounds as good as having the Blue Angels and the Thunderbirds fly high above American cities because, oorah, America, let's lick the boot. But is it really needed? That's the question that we all have to have here. And the answer is simple: no. We should be leading the pack on why we need to get rid of nuclear weapons. We need to dispose of our entire nuclear arsenal. And we need to sit there and say, look at us, we've done it. Let's approach world peace. Let's get rid of this destructive weapon that should have never existed. Nuclear energy. The splitting of an atom should have remained the peaceful atom. We made it the atom of war. Trump is also using this to ignite his base, to get them excited. Because when he is the first president since 1992 to test a nuclear weapon, suddenly he's powerful again. Remember, Trump has this image issue where he has to be, he fantasizes about strong and, mighty men. That's been his thing. When he talked about the Space Force, strong, mighty, manly. It's always been his thing, even with the military. I mean, this is obvious through everything he's done. And here we are talking about doing a nuclear test because that's strong and mighty. America, oorah. That's what that is. It's ridiculous, though, and it's dangerous. I fall back to what this could do. Again, Trump and the Republicans are claiming that Russia and China have both conducted low-yield nuclear tests, except there's no evidence to verify this. So they could potentially use this false claim as a reason to do a nuclear test. Now, what happens? Suddenly, we violate the treaty. And yes, international treaties, it's a sticky point in libertarian thought processes, but right now in the world we're in, we need things that are going to stop us all from blowing each other off this earth. We do it enough with conventional weapons. We don't need it with nukes. But here we are. We test a nuclear weapon. Boom, blow it up. Hoorah. Let's ignore the fact that it's a waste of millions of dollars that we don't need to be wasting. Suddenly, Russia actually has verifiable evidence as to why they can now test a nuke. Suddenly, China now has verifiable evidence as to why they can test a nuke. Suddenly, Iran, who we've been violating their nuclear program for years, saying they don't need them, suddenly they can go, wow, you hypocrites. And they can start testing nukes. And North Korea can start testing nukes. And we can have a nuclear party testing them across the world. And we sparked a new nuclear arms race, which was dangerous on multiple fronts. The nuclear arms race in post-World War II attributed to horrendous environmental destruction. Bikini Atoll. There are parts of it that you do not want to step foot in. There are parts of it where you cannot eat fish from. The woodlands of Russia in Siberia. There are parts that are still extremely radioactive, that are dangerous to be near. There are places like America's Chernobyl, which is an island where we tested nuclear devices and we had to cement in the remnants of it. It led to the worst environmental destruction at all in the last 200 years. Beyond that, it put the world at the brink of nuclear war. Not because anyone had fired a nuclear weapon on anybody besides good old America here, but because we were racing to build bigger, better bombs, and that led to speculation of where those bombs were, where they could reach, and what they could do. So then we hit this point where we were racing with Russia. You entered the Cuban Missile Crisis, which put us on the verge of launching nuclear weapons. The Cold War as a whole came very close to destroying the planet we know. But for the sake of Trump's vanity, for the sake of his ego and his image that he wishes to have, he's willing to put us on the brink of that. Instead of a logical person who right now should be saying we should be leading the charge in denuclearization. Again, America, we should be making the peaceful atom again. But instead, we are about to kick off Cold War number 2. Now, could it fizzle like some of the other crazy, absolutely horrendous ideas that Trump's had? Yes, it could. Except that top military leaders said they could have such a test ready within months. Now, suddenly, this is super juicy to Trump. Ooh, the first president to test a nuke. Suddenly, it's right back in his head. As soon as it left it, military leaders had to stand there and double it down. Well, here we are. Another week of craziness. Another week of absolute lunacy. Now, to just recap everything, because I've had a couple comments here. Should Section 230 in theory exist? No. Because there's, as Jacob Clark said, there's grants, there's funding and advertising contracts involved in it. The whole entire bill shouldn't exist. But on the same token, we're going to see what happens when it doesn't exist. And in the Trump presidency, that's extremely dangerous because he's a loose cannon, ready to fly at the moment's notice. Under a normal or somewhat normal presidency, could getting rid of Section 230 be great? Heck yeah. Because under a somewhat normal presidency, you don't have a crazed maniac like Trump with his hand next to the nuclear football. You don't have a crazed maniac like Trump who has devout followers who see him as doing no wrong, who could spark off at the slightest aggression. Nuclear testing. It goes without saying. We shouldn't be testing nukes because nukes shouldn't exist. Damn us for even creating it. Damn us for sparking the race. Because a lot of people sit there and say, well, you know, that race wasn't all our fault. The Cold War wasn't all our fault. Yeah, it was. We were the first ones to develop the technology and use it and demonstrate its destructiveness. And because of us, nations around the world still to this day are fighting to get them. Countries which we have put our literal boot on want them as a self-defense and a deterrence against us and against any aggressor to their land. We shouldn't be testing nuclear weapons. We should be getting rid of nuclear weapons. We should be taking those nuclear weapons, dismantling them, and then taking the cores of those weapons and turning them into clean, renewable energy sources. That's the example we should be making. But again, we have a tyrant that doesn't want to set good examples, doesn't want to take good leads. So that would appear way too liberal of him. That would appear way too weak. We fall back to Trump and how he always strives to look like the strong man, despite the fact that he stands like a centaur mated with I don't know what. His weak image, his weak view of himself needs to be strengthened in any way, shape, or form. Even if that means the risk of global nuclear war. He doesn't care. It doesn't matter to him. Because he's safe. If something pops off with Russia or China, North Korea, Iran, they got bunkers where they can move him. He gets number one priority. The Secret Service whisks him away while the American people suffer. And not just the American people, but the people of whatever country his actions cause things to pop off with. It's not good. And this is why we need to make a great change in the direction that this country takes. Honestly, this could have occurred with this man, whether he was a Republican or a Democrat, okay? These two parties, they fold core values and principles to march in line with the person if residing in the White House, if that person has the letter of their party following their name. This is why America needs to make a major change. And this is how I tie these topics back to libertarian thought. If a libertarian was in the White House, we wouldn't have to worry about a Twitter fact check or a Twitter censorship causing a libertarian president to go off the rails. Quite frankly, we wouldn't have to worry about a libertarian president spending their whole day on Twitter because, well, a libertarian president would be actually trying to get something done with the motives of liberty, with peace, and with the goals of this party in mind. With a libertarian president, we wouldn't have to worry about sparking a new global nuclear arms race because they want to test a nuclear weapon. Because the libertarian president would be taking the lead and leading the charge to get rid of these weapons, these destructive things that should not exist. A libertarian president would be pushing to get rid of them. This is, again, I'm gonna reference something that I love to say, and people that are friends with me know me to say this. I don't know who came up with this phrase, but they were great for it. Trump's not the disease. He's a symptom of the disease. The disease is us constantly putting people in office who let the power go to their heads, and then suddenly they run wild. The disease is parties falling in lockstep with their president because they have the ultimate seat in the country. The disease is us forgetting that the presidency really doesn't have a ton of power, and that power resides within Congress. And this is why we need to make a change. This is why America needs the Libertarian Party. Because all these things would not exist if we had 1 or 2 cycles to begin the work of fixing this. Thank you for watching Voice of Liberty. And as always, awaken the voice of liberty.